So ultimately, the Ellerman is a celebration of South Africa, South African people, South African wine, and South African food, and just us coming together.
South African wine is so special because it's not simply just drinking a glass of wine. It's like a window into the culture of the Cape Winelands. It's about the growers in the vineyards. It's about the wine producers. It's about the people serving the wine, the chefs cooking the food. It's really about a whole coming together of so many different elements to create what you have in your glass. With a collection of over 10,000 bottles of local South African wine, it made perfect sense for us to create a wine that would be part of our DNA and that was really special to us.
So we knew we wanted to do it. I guess we were looking for the right time, but we wanted to have that sense of place when you drink that wine. You feel like you got all the senses from the place where you are: serenity, balance, freshness. We have the ocean is right in front of us. A sense of calmness in a wine. Everything is just balanced, and be able to identify the vineyard that will achieve that together. Erika has that. The connection with her vines that she worked with, the vineyard that she worked with, and be able to identify those ones, the connection with the soil, and what to get, what to pick. She's amazing.
When we started to look at what the blend of the Ellerman needs to be, it took me back to what can we showcase? How can we showcase this wine and still show the elegance of the South African winelands? But the real magic of these vineyards are the soils they're planted in. So we need to understand what they're communicating to us, and you can only do that by touching the soil, tasting the berries, and kind of fast forward that mindset and taste into your final wine. When you visit these farms and you walk through these vineyards, they actually bring across so much soul. But I think the real magic of South African wines is the sunshine. We can taste the sunshine in our wines, and they just have so much energy. So it's soils and sun that comes together.
I think it's just magic. The product that came out, we knew was very special. We have the amazing feedback that we got from the industry, being 5-star, for example, in Platte. I think it's also a proof that we were doing the right thing. So I'm very proud of it.
It's just a very special project because I think wine in itself relates to art, to the beauty, to the elegance of what Ellerman House stands for. And it was so special to put a wine together that can really embrace and showcase the character, the true character of elegance that you find at Ellerman House.
And that sets the scene rather nicely for not only where we find ourselves, but why we find ourselves where we do. Welcome to Ellerman House, that slice of luxury in Bantry Bay that looks out, especially today, on a glorious view across to Robben Island and across Table Bay, and which today is enhanced by a rather nice glass of wine I have beside me, the brand new vintage of the Ellerman. Now go back to April, and you might recall we did another very special edition of the show where we tried what was then a brand new adventure as Ellerman House took a step into the world of its own wine, not wine itself, because Ellerman's cellar is one of the most celebrated in South Africa, but into its very first house wine, although house wine does seem a slightly demeaning term for wine that is quite this good and made by somebody quite this special. It's been a short journey, but a marvellous one thus far. And today we meet a selection of people who'll be trying the wine with me, celebrating it, and telling us what they think of the latest edition of the Ellerman. But before we go into the new vintage, let's go back a little and get a recap of the story. Probably my all-time favourite South American is with me here. He's got assorted titles at Ellerman House. He's chief sommelier, he's operations manager, he's head of security, puts the chlorine in the pool. There's not much he doesn't do. Manuel, lovely to see you.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for coming. Thank you for visiting us. Thank you for the support on this.
Well, like I say, it's great to be back. It doesn't take much persuasion to get to Ellerman House. And at Ellerman House, we could talk about the art, we could talk about the food, talk about the view. Apparently, there's a gym. I've never seen it, but apparently there is a gym. Lots we could talk about, but we really want to focus on the wine today and the story of this wine. We told it before, but give us a quick recap what the inspiration was to decide, you know what, we need the Ellerman. This is what it should be, and this is who we'd like to make it with.
Yeah. Well, we done this before. We did it last year. We launched in 2018. And the wine was simple. The brief was very simple. Create a wine that has a bit of sense of place to the property itself. You know, our DNA, our values, and our sort of feeling of what Ellerman House is all about. You know, where it's located, what is the approach of us as a personalities, and how do we take care of our guests. And try to kind of get all that in senses into a wine, you know, without having a vineyard to kind of discuss and go back to sense of place. So the wine needs to be elegant, needs to be fresh, and needs to be South African, and a wine that can travel the world, showcasing basically the best of South Africa when it comes to wine. So that was a brief one.
It's also going to showcase Ellerman House, and that's an interesting one because straight away, and you can never admit this, but I can say this because I don't work here, you have everybody from Oprah to assorted Kardashians to Federer and Nadal. You've got big names, which suggests you might go for a big wine, some Bordeaux blockbuster that knocks you off your feet. And yet, despite the kind of people who come here, there's always an air of discretion to Ellerman House, an air of subtlety. It's very refined luxury. And I felt that's what you needed to translate into the wine. And I think that's what you did.
I think that you just mentioned the two word key of the wine is discretion and the wine that is approachable as well. You know, this sort of sense of luxury, which is not a different. It's a wine that's just it's seamless, you know, simply in the sense of well made and well crafted. You know, so yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it's all about.
Now, you are a sommelier, and you'll never say this because you're a very humble guy, but you're a celebrated sommelier. You've traveled the world on cruise ships. You've got an enormous amount of experience, but you know South African wine particularly well. You made the wine with Erika Obermeyer. We're going to be chatting to her in a moment. She is, for me, as exciting a winemaking talent as we have in South Africa at the moment. And in her post-Graham Beck days, she's reinvented herself majestically, which means you've got fabulous winemaker and you've got world-class sommelier. There's the potential for a bit of a clash there. Who knows better? But it looks like you've worked this out really well together, and you found a space where you've come together to create a wine that keeps both of you very happy, and those of us drinking it even more so.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most easy experience with working with Erika. I take no credit whatsoever in wine. She has amazing wines made already, and all I did is a bit of feedback and a bit of tasting and input on the blending, which was super accommodating from the beginning. So that's, the blending side, I could probably have a little bit, but she did pretty much everything. And we know Erika. Erika is unbelievable. I mean, I met her since the first time I met her. You know, the quality of winemaker she is, and the person as well as she is. So, I think it's having two personalities working together very well from the beginning. We make everything great to do the first vintage, and now this vintage actually we are about to launch, which is. We got a great success for the first one, and this one, I think this is pretty much like the music people say, this is the best album I've ever done. I think this is the best wine out of the two. Both are very different, but this one is just so amazing. And very happy with it.
So essentially, the two of you have come together as a blend, and that's exactly what we have in wine. Before we have a look at the new vintage, the one you've had so far, what's been the response from the media, from wine people, and I suppose very important for you, from the guests who drank it here at Ellerman House?
Oh, very, very happy actually. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, we've always been very, very fortunate and famous for having a great collection and showcase South African wines. This is, I'll say that's 99.9% South African wines, and we go back to decades of wines, and we take it very seriously, and we raise the wine property, and we don't compromise with that. We don't see ourselves selling wine, we serve wine, which is slightly different. So when we came out, obviously the new, our regular guests, we did a lot of them. For us going into this wine business sort of idea, it won't just be anything. So great response. Our guests overseas, they really want to get it. We got the one available in America now, which is pretty much sold out. Whatever location you get to the States, and now, yeah, that's the response. People want to travel. People want to share Ellerman House and somehow. And I think this is a great way to share the wine. It's Ellerman House, on the wine, wherever you are from. So great response. Yeah.
So big tick for the very first one. What about the second? Well, we'll find out very shortly with Manuel. He's already got some in his glass, and the smile tells you what he thinks about it. Before we do that, though, let's head over to the wine cellar at Ellerman House, which, as I've said many times on this show, is one of my favorite places in the world. It's just such a cool cellar filled with such amazing wine, and it's an architectural gem, and it's overseen by a brand new CEO. I think he's also Chief Indulgence Officer. It's a very close eye on the wine. Carol, Kohne, lovely to have you on. Dan really likes wine. Welcome not just to the show, but I suppose also kind of welcome to the new role. It's a new job and a new adventure for you.
Yes, thanks, Dan. I've been at Ellerman House for 17 years already, but I've always been in the back end. I'm the finance manager. I have been the finance person here for many years. And now with the change of Paul leaving, I've been appointed to the position of CEO and looking after the business with the financial background. And the team on the ground are doing the rest of the guest-facing experience and looking after everything that happens here. So it's a great honor and a privilege to be part of this team and to lead the team in the new era of Ellerman House, and looking forward to so much fun with them. And what a better place to do it than Ellerman House.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. I got here a little earlier today and I stepped out onto the deck, had some lunch, perfect blue skies, the views across Table Bay. It's proper postcard stuff, which leads to the question, how do you actually ever get any work done here, Carol?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Sometimes you get forced into just being at your desk and getting stuff out when there's deadlines. But most of the day, we enjoy seeing what the guests are up to and making sure that they look after and just exploring this beautiful view that we have. The scenes of the sea and the Atlantic Ocean in front of us. We've got Lion's Head behind us, our indigenous garden. So it is quite a hard one to kind of get yourself out of that experience and then get to your desk and do the work that needs to get done. But the incredible team, they push hard and they get the magic being made here at Ellerman House.
And it's magic that is experienced by everybody who does come here. We mentioned a couple of the better known names a moment ago, but from all over the world, you get guests normally coming in, just not quite so much over the last year or two for obvious reasons. Are you starting to see that change? Are we starting to see more people come in from around the world and starting to revive this crucial tourism industry of ours?
100%. It's been so positive seeing since the borders have opened. The bookings are looking incredible. Just hope that the fourth wave and nothing stops us. But it is really, really good to have hearing international voices again and to see the old return guests really looking forward to coming back here and experiencing their second home. So got my fingers crossed, and we'll see that they get here safely and look after them with the best care in the world.
And give them plenty of wine, which is obviously very important. I'm going to ask you to try the wine in a second. Just let me know what you think, not as a wine expert, but simply as a wine enthusiast. But in terms of the importance of wine, Paul Harris and I have spent many hours talking about the cellar and its history and how much it means to this particular property. We're obviously a little biased being a wine show, but how much does having not just the quality of cellar and the aesthetic and the marvelous architecture, but this amazing array of South African wine to give to international guests have for you as a very upmarket luxury property?
So the essence of Ellerman House is very much to showcase the best of what South Africa has to offer. And we've talked about our location and our garden. On the other hand, we've got our beautiful art collection. We've got this incredible staff who just ooze the spirit of hospitality. And then we've got our food, which is kind of homely, fresh, local produce, and our wine. We have got a huge cellar of more than 7,000 bottles that represent all the wine farms across South Africa. And I think having our own wine, that's just a cherry on the top to promote the wine industry in the best that South Africa has to offer.
And I think that's so important because I know it is part of your philosophy. Yes, you've got your own wine, but you celebrate wine from all over South Africa, and it's wonderful to see a property like this doing exactly that. A part of your job that I would imagine it's probably on your list of things to do every day is wake up, get to the office, have a glass of the Ellerman just to see how it's drinking today, which I admire, Carol. It's a very, very noble thing to do. You've tried the wine. What do you think of it just in terms of simple enjoyment?
I really loved the 2018, but the 19 has just got a little bit more punch. So I think it's going to really live well. I'm hoping that we can do a 2020 and then we can have a trilogy of wine that we can give to the guests.
I suspect 2020 will very much be part of the start rather than any sort of finish. Carol, thank you. Congratulations on the elevation. I know you've been here for a long time, but it is a brand new space, and I know it's going to be a very exciting one for you. So enjoy, keep sampling that wine. It's an important part of the job. And thanks for joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to lots of fun and lots more glasses of wine.
Indeed. Well, let's go on to those glasses of wine. Manny, we've got an endorsement there from Carol of this particular wine. She really enjoys it. You are somebody who's forced you, poor thing, to drink this for a living.
Yeah.
Go back to 2018. Give us the footprint of that particular wine. And that's what changed for the new vintage.
Yeah, so I think that, well, probably Erika will speak more about the name, but I mean, the initial blend, and I think we were so happy with the initial sort of, let's call it formula, on Shiraz base, followed by Grenache. So, and the 18 has a massive difference, which has 6% Cabernet, which make a big difference in the wine, with or without it. This one has 3% Cabernet on it, which is a little more Shiraz. So that's the difference that changed. Grenache and Cinsault pretty much stay the same. But also the vintage can speak on its own. The wine is probably more perfume and aromatic, lighter. It was a very exciting wine to put together. We did it in the middle of lockdown. That's very, very, like right after a hard lockdown, like, okay, well, now we need to get them down, now we got a window kind of thing, just to kind of see each other again. And yeah, the wine, I think, is just, I'm going to be honest, the last time I tasted was like a year ago. We sneaky tasted on the launch of 2018. And yeah, it's proved to what was done was perfect. The wine is just so fantastic when it's ready to go.
You don't make a huge amount of this,
No,
and it sells pretty quickly. Does that suggest that in conversation with Erika, you've tried to produce a wine that's a little more accessible a little earlier, or are you hoping that a case or two might hold out for a couple of decades?
it's difficult because, I mean, the 2018 is a lot. We got very little amount left, and I'm kind of regret it now. Like, it was so good. And we just left a little bit behind. And so for this vintage, we did a bit more. We did 3,000 bottles of this vintage. I think it's going to keep us going for a little longer than the 2018. And I also opened those markets that we want to explore. America is already one of them, and then with this one, we intend to go to the UK. We have a massive amount of kids that come from the UK and asking about it. So that's definitely a way to go, and that's probably gonna move the wine quicker. The wine, in terms of the approach, yes, you're gonna be a wine that you can drink it like now released 2018, and then of course it will be aged further and get better change. So it's got both ways. I don't want to have a wine. We don't want to have a wine that you're gonna have to wait for a decade just to open a bottle. So it should be approachable. Should be able to have a with and without food. Has a lot of energy in the wine, which it has. You have to tick all the boxes that should be good.
So it's not the Eben Sadi time capsule. It's something we can get straight into. I know we've got Erika waiting. She'll be joining us in just a second. Last one for you, Manny. If people want to get hold of this, is this absolutely exclusive? Do you have to book 3 villas for a month at Ellerman House to get hold of it? Or is there a way to get a glass of this?
Well, yeah, it's obviously is safe an Ellerman House. We said here, and our restaurant is not really open to the public. We're quite friendly on low season. Let's call April, November, when we don't really full, and we like to get our locals to come and explore what we do, and obviously taste the wine. The season is a bit different. It's a little bit difficult to allow non-residents, but during that period, you can get it in port to port. Port to port is our way to sell the wines in South Africa, and in America will be kept out. So there's many ways. Otherwise, people that know people, give me a call and we find a way.
Phone the Chilean embassy. Tell them you want Manuel's number. There's only one Manuel in Chile, so you should be fine. It's another great dish. It's certainly ready to drink now, but I think another 3-4 years, it's gonna start finding another level and a bit more depth. But already it's got. What broadly speaking is the Erika signature, which is just really, really good wine. Senor Manuel, gracias, thank you.
Salud.
There we go. So Manuel is, I don't actually know what his title is now. It's just like very important, gets lots of stuff done, including giving me glasses of wine. And in this case, a glass of wine made by Erika Obermeyer. Now, Erika's been on the show on many occasions. She's somebody I've got a huge amount of fondness for, a huge amount of respect for, because she decided that when life changed at Graham Beck and they were only going to make bubbles, instead of staying on and being part of that story, she was going to create her own. And the narrative that has emerged is one that has been award-winning, and it's made those of us who've drunk her wine extremely happy indeed. So let's head back to the wine cellar at Ellerman House, and there she is, broad smile in place. Erika, welcome, lovely to see you.
Good to have you, Dan. Always good. And what place to celebrate the new vintage of the Ellerman. I mean, it's just heaven on earth. So I'm very happy.
Let's go back to the first vintage before we talk about this marvelous new follow-up. And not so much the process, because we've chatted about that a fair bit, but just the response you got to the wine. And it's one I asked very specifically because the response to your wine generally over the last few years, and it has even overwhelmed you, from the awards to the sheer volume of praise from critics all over the world. So this particular wine came with high expectations, particularly from me. What was your sense of the response to this wine and your ability to deliver on the mandate of Manny and his team to produce a wine that really brought out a sense of what Ellerman House is all about?
I think the brief was initially quite daunting, and to walk into Ellerman House and not to be overwhelmed by the beauty is something. But I think pretty much from the second minute, it just fell into this perfect opportunity for me to explore, to produce something very unique, very South African, and just to really showcase South Africa in a very elegant way that resembles what Ellerman House is what you experience when you visit. So it was probably the easiest job making this wine, putting it together, and the team at Ellerman House, working with Manny. I've got huge respect. The way that he carries himself in tastings and just always brings almost the best out of you as a winemaker. So it was pretty easy, and it's just a fun job, and I enjoy it.
One of the things I love about our best winemakers, and you sit very firmly in that category, is the combination of modesty, but also the learning, the fact that as good as a wine might have been, as much as it might have got a 5-star platter rating or a best of here or there is still lessons to be learned. There still are lessons to be learned from that particular vintage. What did you learn from the first vintage of the Ellerman that then spoke to you about the follow-up?
That's a very, very good question. And I think 2018, our very maiden vintage, was a very challenging vintage, being the third year of this extreme drought in South Africa. And we had to pick slightly earlier on all our pickings in 2018, just not to lose any of the freshness of the wine, which I think is paramount in a good fine wine that needs to age. That freshness is so important. So from 2018, I think we were very cautious not to miss any of those powerful perfumey flavors. And I think from 2018 to 2019, 2019, I'm extremely happy. It was quite a warm vintage. The very first year when the drought broke, and we had sufficient rains, not 100% what we wanted. 2020 was basically the first vintage that we had it all going for us again. But 19 gave us almost more confidence, and I think it shows in the wine. The wine to me is more expressive, it's more perfumey, it's got a little bit more soul. The 18 is almost like a shy child, and it waits a few minutes to open up in the glass, where the 19 is just all, here I am and let's party. So I really enjoy the 19 vintage, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go in the next 10 years.
But let's party is a slightly worrying sound. I remember what happened the last time we celebrated the launch of the Ellerman, but it is the kind of wine that brings out that sense of celebration. In terms of creating something, Erika, that's got a particular sense of identity, you've made so much wine that has got so much acclaim. I had some of your Flabbergasted the other day, and it's drinking is delightful as ever. Your Cabernet Sauvignon is extraordinary. You could have quite easily just wheeled a couple of barrels out from a corner somewhere, popped them in a bottle, and bang, here's some really, really good wine. And you haven't done that. You've done something very, very specific with this project. How do you almost set part of Erika aside and say, right, yes, I'm making this wine, but this has got to be the Ellerman and not an Erika wine. It's got to be something that, as I sit here at Ellerman House drinking, I think, yeah, this is wine for this place. How do you do that as a winemaker?
I think it's very important as a winemaker. We need to always remember that we're storytellers. We're telling a story of a sense of place, and that needs to shine in the glass. When you open it, it immediately needs to tell you where you're drinking this from. Is it South Africa? Is it a specific ward in South Africa? And I think if you can remember that you're the storyteller and that this precious fruit is in your hands, and you've got this huge responsibility to take it into something incredible that can tell that story to the guest or the person that drinks it. I'm not always going to be around to tell that story, so the wine really needs to do that. So to do that, for me, I need to really get into the personality of the person, or for this case, Ellerman House. And I think that's where I started. I wanted to show a wine that is incredibly elegant, that's also quite opulent, and it's expressive, pretty much like Ellerman House. Every corner you turn to, there's just something new to explore, and this incredible art, being so close to the ocean. It's an explosion of the senses in all aspects, and I think that was something that I wanted to capture in the wine. And to do that is it's really easy to go to the vineyards and just to get the inspiration from the vineyard, and then from there it's easy to translate it into the glass.
Final one for you. We've got a range of guests to chat to this evening, many of whom are excitedly drinking this wine at the moment. You are 2 vintages in, and I seem to remember asking you a similar question in April when we had the earlier show talking about this and it being a project and something of a legacy. Do you see this particular wine being a journey that you want to take for some time going forward and really craft it, really develop it, and watch it as it grows into something more and more with each particular vintage?
Most definitely. I think as you go along, this year Manny got to experience 46 degrees Celsius in our Cinzo vineyards, and you learn one another. You kind of understand a little bit more what it needs, and I think that drives you to a point where the wine can really become excellent. The journey does give us the ability to adapt. So I'm very much looking forward to in the next month we're going to put together the 2020 vintage, which I think is I'm extremely happy about the 2020 vintage. It's wines that's very expressive. Anything that the year of COVID wasn't. So yeah, it's a huge honor again, and to be associated with a beautiful place like Ellerman House is just I have to pinch myself, and we're very much looking forward to put together this wine, and maybe in 10 years time we can all get together and have one big party and celebrate 10 vintages of the Ellerman. So definitely it's something that we're going to work very hard at and introduce new pockets of Syrah that we started to work with this year. So there's always place to grow, and I think as a winemaker we always strive to make that perfect wine, and that's the beauty of the winemaking business, and sharing that with customers and people around the globe. So we want to show South Africa in the best possible way, and I'm looking forward to the road ahead.
I've checked my diary, 10 years' time. I'm free for that party, Erika, so expect me to be there, charging through a selection of vintages. It's another lovely wine. It's another great triumph for you and Ellerman. Erika, thank you very much indeed. All right, so there we go. Erika making a wine, which I poured a glass, a fairly full glass for my next guest about 2 minutes ago. He's just refilled it, which is a pretty good sign, Mr. Joe Bergfield. Steve, lovely to see you.
And always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. This is a place you don't spend an infrequent amount of time at. You're a big Ellerman House fan. Many people, Steve Steinfeld, the Joe Bergfield. Ah, yes, of course. We know him extremely well. You get to hang out all over the place. This is as good a reflection of come to South Africa. It's amazing as we have to offer.
Without a doubt, I think it is the ultimate in hospitality in South Africa. It is, everything is just the way it should be, and you arrive and it's beautiful, and yeah, there's nowhere to be.
And nothing you'd rather be doing, of course, than drinking wine and eating great food. You're a very regular guest on the show, for which we are most grateful.
Likewise.
You've spent so much time eating and drinking your way around stuff. It doesn't look like it, but you have. And so it's given you a really good understanding of where we are food and wine-wise in South Africa. And my sense is that despite what we've been through over the last year and a half, 2 years, we are still, food-wise and especially wine-wise, continuing, all of our troubles notwithstanding, to punch well above our collective weight in South Africa.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have. I think with wine, you're spot on. I do think food, we have seen a shift towards a safer type of cuisine and a safer type of offering. I'm hoping that, as the tourists come back, we start elevating to that global level again. And as I say, I understand why it's happened, but I think it is, I think we do rely a lot on an international palate to boost our food scene just a little bit.
But we need food and wine because it is such a big attraction for people who come here. And this is a fascinating one. When you first got wind of the fact that Ellerman House was producing wine, what were you expecting?
Wow, I don't know what I was expecting, but I think you mentioned it earlier, is you do kind of expect Ellerman House, so proudly South African, a seller of amazing South African wine. You perhaps think that maybe they would go for, a very classic Bordeaux-style red, something that's big, bold. But then again, that's not really Ellerman. And it is just the epitome of elegance and class and sophistication. And yeah, I kind of perhaps imagine something like a Pinot maybe. But I think what they've done is sensational. Yeah.
And you had the first one. I know you thoroughly enjoyed it. You're on to your third glass of the latest vintage. What are your thoughts on this one?
It's beautiful. I think it is testament to Erika as a winemaker, but also to the quality of the wine itself and how it has been put together by Manny and Erika together. I think it's very much in line with the 18. It's definitely a bit of a bigger vintage, I'm finding. I think it's beautiful. Yeah, thoroughly enjoying it.
It's also wine that has got a big job to do sitting with food. You are the Joe Berg foodie. You eat out 4 times a day, so you're well versed in what goes with what. If you're sitting down, ideally, with a bottle of this, what's for dinner?
I think it's such a complex wine, and it's got the tension seems to be the buzzword in wine at the moment. And you speak to numerous people, and they all seem to have very different ideas of it. But what I love is you've got this beautiful fruit core, and you've got the structure of the Syrah, fruits obviously coming from the Simso. You've got those grainy tannins from the Grenache. And it's complex enough that it does allow itself to work with many different types of dishes. I think a beautiful piece of meat with some great fat on it, perhaps some Wagyu, maybe some nice lamb would go really well. But at the same time, it's got that wonderful sweetness, really cool acidity that could go with a curry or something like that. So I think it is a really great food wine through and through. And again, just perfect match for Ellerman.
Well, which preempts the question I was going to follow up with, not directly related to this particular wine, but a lot of what you write and what you talk about kind of leaves the door open to what you should be eating and drinking with. And we've spoken many times on this show about not narrowing down only this with only that. And this is a good example of wine that's got a certain flexibility to it.
No, completely. And I think we're finding more and more wines are lending themselves towards more diverse food pairings because our wines, as you say, are becoming more complex. We're making better wine, and naturally, you know, it allows itself to just be so much more versatile.
Although I think also, in fairness, there's probably a lot of stuff we could have drunk with other things we were just told not to, and so we didn't. 2 vintages in of the Ellerman. I know there are many, many more to come, and much wine to celebrate. Before we wrap up, there were rumours, Mr. Foodie, that we're going to be seeing a bit more of you in the Cape.
Yeah, I mean, I've been back and forth between Joburg and Cape Town pretty much every month for the last few years. So just making it a bit more formal, and we'll be spending quite a bit more time in Cape Town, hopefully the winelands as well, getting more, you know, up close with the vineyards, going to do harvest of it hopefully, and just had a chat with Erika around the corner about perhaps, you know, maybe going to check out their new centre, which she just finished building and putting together today.
Just in time for the show.
Just in time.
Exciting times, very exciting times for you. Don't forget us up in Johannesburg.
No, definitely not.
If you've got a restaurant, a wine estate, a hotel, a B&B, the backpackers, a food van, anything, and know that Mr. Steinfeld is down in Cape Town and would love to come and have you. Steve, thank you.
Thank you,
Lovely assessment on the wine.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I need to get myself one of those jackets just to
we're almost matching.
The boys in velvet. All right, Steve Steinfeld is your big foodie. Always a delight having Steve with us on the show and give you some insight into food and wine. Let's head back down to the wine cellar where that's a nice close-up of the Ellerman, and that's it. That's the image, great piece of architecture of Ellerman House, which sits in Bantry Bay. You can see the Erika Obermeyer wines label at the bottom, and a very exciting piece of news there, confirmed by Steve, that her new cellar is ready to go, and it's going to take what is an already an exceptional wine platform into something very, very special. And Steve will be visiting soon. I will as well. In terms of visiting Ellerman House, well, it's into summer, so it's a little difficult in terms of wanting to come and try some wine or have dinner. But knock on the door, tell me you're a friend of Manny's. You never know what might happen. I think we might have a new guest waiting for us in the wine cellar. So let's see if we can nip down to the wine cellar and see if Bienne is there waiting for us from the Daily Maverick, who's one of our media guests. We've also got Jax from Wine Mag, Jacqueline Lahoud, will be joining us as well. And we'll be getting her in just a moment. And just getting some different perspectives on a wine that in a very short space of time has garnered a lot of attention and a lot of interest. So Bienne, I think, I hope you'll be joining us in just a moment down in the wine. So there we go. We've got a very familiar face in the wine world. She is the driving force and the dynamo behind Wine Magazine, and ensures that Christian is all tasting 96 bottles of wine a day. She's making sure the business runs nice and smoothly. But drinks a little wine us up. Jacqueline Lahoud, lovely to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Dan. Cool.
Before we ask you for your opinion on the wine, which we will do in just a moment, give us a little bit of an update on Wine Magazine, because you've been, I think, a really good example of making the transition from what now seems like the good old days of print into a digital model that's punching above its weight and fighting hard to keep going. Give us a snapshot of the Wine Magazine story and that transition to where you are today.
Thank you for saying that we're punching above our weights. I like to think that we are. I like to use that term quite regularly. And now you're making it a reality by saying it as well. But Dan, yeah, we're doing really, really nicely. We run 14 reports during the course of the year, which means we taste about at least 1,000 wines blind every year, and we select the best wines from that, which is a challenge in its own, just tasting what's in the glass, irrespective of the producer or who's behind it. Outside of that, what we're currently busy with is the Label Design Awards. We judge also what's outside the bottle, the packaging, for wine, beer, and spirits, and we're in the process of judging that, and we'll be revealing that beginning of December. But most exciting is our best of category. So with each report that we run, we produce a top 10, and from that top 10, we then announce the best of category. And on Friday, the 12th of November, we are awarding the top 20 wines of South Africa for 2021, which is going to be super exciting. We've got some of the best wines in the room. We've got some delicious food paired with that, lovely entertainment, and makes for a great evening. And alongside that, we'll announce the best white and the best red, followed by the binary of the year. So yes, I like to think that we have come a long way, and it's a happy place to be. Christian's the palate, and he does the hard work in terms of all the tasting, and he gets all the flack in terms of the crits. But I also do the holding together of our business, and it's super fun to be promoting South African wine, and it's great to be here promoting another South African wine, and very much to an international market, because I think it's 95 or 98% of the guests that come to Ellerman House are international. And so we are putting South African wine and grapes on the map in every way that we possibly can, which is fabulous for the industry.
It certainly is, and it's also fabulous to still be able to read and to engage and to talk about wine on your platform. From a business perspective, how challenging is it to run a space which increasingly the world in which we live is dependent on the commercial support of the broader wine industry, and yet at the same time you're having to judge them on a daily basis? So, you know what, I didn't think this wine is quite so good. How difficult is that balance to strike?
No, it's particularly difficult. It really is. And the way we try and divide that is our reports are all done blind and our reviews are done cited, the daily reviews. We're going to have to change our model because it's the only way we will survive. So twofold. The one is our cited reviews are going to go behind a paywall. So it's all good and well that we rate these great wines, but we get nothing for that. And I say nothing, it's good to promote South African wine, but from a cash flow perspective, it's nothing. So my job is really hard, that putting it behind a paywall in 2022 will help us achieve that. People want to read the reviews and they'll come and read the reviews, but they'll have to pay for it. But the reports will be something that we offer the consumer freely, openly, and widely distribute as to promote all of those, the top 10 through each of the reports. But it is a challenging time. You know, everybody expects to get things for free in the digital space. People are not used to paying for content in the digital space, and it's difficult. It's a difficult challenge. And we're always looking for sponsors. So if there's anybody out there, if you just give me a shout. Jax at Winemaker. Sorry, Dan, I shouldn't have done that, but you know.
No, it's completely fair enough, Jackie, and without saying too much, it's a space that we're hoping to be able to work with you a little more closely on, because I think that both Wine Magazine and Dan Really Likes Wine have got a very similar philosophy at heart, which is a love of South African wine and a desire to promote it, to celebrate it, and to see it do better. And I think it leads into the story we're about to tell with this wine in just a moment. But if I can ask you before we do that, just your sense, honestly, just between the two of us, Chassie, where South African wine is at the moment, the understanding that you get from your readers, from the people who are writing from you all over the world, people like Greg Sherwood contributing from the UK with a very global perspective. How good are we at the moment? How strong do you feel our wine industry is?
So without using it, well, I didn't want to use it for the third time, but I'm going to anyway on this show. We as South Africans, and in terms of the wine industry, we punch above our weight. That's what we do. I was looking at the price point for the Ellerman, and I thought, yeah, that's a good price point for the Ellerman, considering most of the consumers are going to be international consumers. But it's even so, it's not that expensive versus the wines that you would pay for, and the quality that you would get for those wines in international places when you went to a 7-star establishment, like you would come and enjoy here. So we punch above our weight. I think we've come out really well post this, shall we call it a reflective time. Let's call it a reflective time that we've had in 2021 and 2020. And I think we've come out well on the other side because it's given people a chance to think, some breathing space to prioritize what I really want to do with my wines. How should I be branding it differently? Which market should I be approaching in a better way? And I think the guys that went, woe is me, are, not really around. And the guys that went, this is a challenge, this is interesting, let me do something that's good. And a lot of them have done that. And I think we're in a great space. I mean, of course I'm going to say that because I'm involved with Wine Mag, but I'm not just saying it because of that. I'm saying it because that's really how I feel and and where it's at. It's a great space to be in. I love drinking wine. Christian loves tasting wine. But we've got wines that really do punch above their weights in South Africa. And so what's not to like?
I can see the passion burning through, which is lovely to see, Jacqueline. Last one for you. We've got the wine, you've got some in the glass. And again, as we said with Carol a little earlier, not asking you as the wine expert, but simply somebody who really enjoys a glass of wine. But what is it, if there is anything, I hope there is, about this particular glass that puts a smile on your face?
Erika's watching me. What am I to say? Of course I'm going to say it's good. No, I'm just teasing. No, so Dan, for me, the most important part, because I'm not the palate, as I've said before, but for me, the most important part about a wine is that it's in good balance. And I feel like this wine is in good balance. There's, without getting geeky, because I'm not that person, but it's a wine that I would want to drink more of. I want to sit with it and I want to drink it and I want to enjoy it. I want to enjoy the bouquet. And I'm looking forward to having dinner with it. And I particularly, for my personal preference, I enjoy a wine that's not too heavy. I don't like a big, robust, bullish cab. I definitely lean towards Cinsaults and Grenaches. I love a lighter styled Syrah, in terms of my reds. And this is pulling together all of those with a dash of cab to kind of give it some structure and hold it together. And I think that's what's great about this wine. It's a wine that I want to drink more of. It's a wine that's going to go well with some lighter foods like, mushrooms and aubergines and smoked things, lentils. Great. And that works for me, So will I be drinking my full glass and not using the spittoon? Absolutely.
Of course, as we've said on many occasions, in fact, the team at Wine Mag are a great example. All spittoons in South Africa, that wine that gets decanted into plastic milk bottles and sent to Australia, and that's how they make their wine. So at least we know that. Jacqueline, lovely to have you on the show. Glad you're enjoying it. And I think what you were effectively saying there was Christian Eats gave us 106 points. So thank you for that. And we'll see you for dinner a little later.
Cool.
There we go. Jacqueline Lahoud from Wine Magazine, who is a very special guest, as is Pippa de Bruin. It's lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Hello.
Great to see you. Let's follow up there on what Jacqueline said. Very bullish, very upbeat about the South African wine industry. You do all sorts of things, traveling and drinking wine, eating great food, and you get a great perspective. Are you as upbeat as Jacqueline about where South African wine is at the moment?
Absolutely. I think we've been underrated for forever. So in a wine like this, it's only a matter of time as people, and we know Africa as a whole is not a great, apparently we have, I don't know what the statistics are now, but it's sort of like 3%, or it's a tiny percentage of travelers that come here. So, and you have to come here to really experience what the range of delicious wines we have. Or be a wine connoisseur who, is interested in South African wines, because generally speaking, when you look, I mean, I don't know about the US, but in the UK, when you look at the wines that are available, I'm not going to mention any names, but they are a very, I mean, I'm always very distressed that our wines are, you know, the sort of bulk wines are being packaged, and then you look under the South African section and there they are. And they're not really representing our best. I mean, we wouldn't, you know, most of us, we wouldn't have them as our house wines.
I know exactly the wines you're talking about, and where when you walk into a branch of Tesco's, you see two dancing giraffes, Shiraz.
Exactly, there's always an animal.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But there are thankfully exceptions,
Yes.
and those are important ones.
Yes.
But it's also important that the kind of wines you have in the country. If I think when I travel, if I go to Greece, I want to drink Greek wine. Greek wine might not always be the best in the world, but I want to drink wine that's there. If I'm in California,
The terroir, you want to drink the terroir when
it
you're
makes
there.
me feel like
Exactly.
in the right sort of place.
Yes.
So how important is it for us to have the kind of wine that says to a sort of luxury traveller who's coming somewhere like this, who's probably drinking Romani Conti when they're out and about, or they're drinking Screaming Eagle, to be able to have great quality South African wine that enhances their trip while still saying, this is South Africa.
Well, I mean, it's essential. It's absolutely essential, which is why this is a fantastic initiative. I mean, you're not drinking the Bantry Bay terroir, but you know, I think it's a representative being, you know, elegant and beautiful and going to last, as Ellerman has for, you know, for as long as it has, and will continue to do so. So yes, I think it's a wonderful initiative that they have made such a beautiful wine. But you must always, I think, if you go anywhere, you must always drink the terroir where you are. So yeah. But this is Stellenbosch, I believe. Well, it's a combination of Stellenbosch, it's Malmesbury, if I'm not incorrect. So it's the best of the best.
It's quintessentially South Africa.
Exactly.
We often talk on this show, we talk generally about wine pairings, and normally we mean food. I'm going to send a different one your way because you've travelled more than most people. Picture yourself, eyes closed, you've got this glass of wine. Where, and it doesn't just have to be one place, maybe two or three, where would you be sitting in South Africa, a country you know particularly well, you've seen so much of, where this would pair so beautifully with a particular sunset or a particular location or a particular experience?
Anyway, the bath.
Very Bridget Jones of you.
No, really, anyway. I mean, if you drink this wine, you can drink anywhere, and you're immediately having a special occasion. The sunset's better, the company's better. In fact, who needs company?
Because then you have to share the bottle, which is not ideal.
Exactly. So one person, you know, I mean, it is a really delicious. It's one of those wines that just evaporates as you. It's like your whole mouth goes.
And it's still so young, which means it's still got a whole load more stories to tell.
Exactly.
As there will be stories told about this wine.
That's if you manage to
hold on to it. Yes.
Yes. So luckily, I believe luckily the cellars here would be under lock and key, because if it was in my home,
it would disappear very quickly. There's also the opportunity to tell stories. And if we think the number of fridge magnets we've got at home from places we've been, your usual, we buy something, you know, Steve went to Mallorca and all he got me was this T-shirt. This is, I think, like the coolest curio possible, because you've been to South Africa, part of your trip has been a few nights a week at Ellerman House, and now 2 weeks later, you're back in LA, you're sitting in Hong Kong, you're in Sydney. Hey guys, here's a bottle, this is the place we stayed. It's such a lovely way of telling the story of what you've done through the medium of wine. I
agree. I mean, it really is that, you know, you are literally enjoying the sunshine, you know, retrospect, or, you know, after the fact, enjoying the sunshine. Because anybody who comes to South Africa must do a wine tour. So you're literally, you know, drinking your memories.
Well, thank you for sharing some of yours with us and enjoying the wine with us. There's a little more to go tonight. We have dinner to look forward to. But Pippa, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being part of the show. Pippa de Bruin. If you've ever subscribed to Getaway magazine or about 300 other publications, you've definitely read the work of Pippa. Very special to have her with us on the show and celebrating the Ellerman. We've got one more very special guest, and that will take us back to the wine cellar, where, as mentioned, the previous vintages are under lock and key, sadly. And Bienne Hulsman is with us from the Daily Maverick. Warm welcome. Lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. with a glass in hand, very, very importantly. Let's get the wine stuff out the way. Bienne, what are your first thoughts on this particular vintage of the Ellerman?
Well, I did my math, and this is 2 years old, so terrible twos, terrific twos. It's still a baby wine, but it's very soft and delicate. Yeah, it's very drinkable.
I think that's a great way of putting it. It's eminently drinkable and approachable and a lot of fun to drink. I had this vision, Bienne, of the Daily Maverick as a whole, where given the kind of stories that you write, the way you try and do a very good job of keeping our country in check, that most of your wine tasting and writing comes at the end of the day when your hair's been torn out because it's been another mad day in the newsroom, and you're trying to calm down as a whole after another madcap day in South Africa. But I suspect it's a little more formal and professional than that. Tell us a little bit about your wine background, your wine history, and what it is about wine that's so special for you.
Well, I just want to qualify. So I write for several publications, including Daily Maverick. I'm from Stellenbosch, so I grew up with wine on the lunch table, dinner table, not the breakfast table. I think it's important to know that this, I don't know, it makes me proud, and to associate this with a beautiful landmark is a hospitality establishment like Ellerman House. It's just so exciting. I think as a journalist, I've done a lot of writing on, well, tourism and business and hospitality and the film industry, and you know what the massive spin-off that brings. And Ellerman House is very key to that, with the beautiful art, the views, and the type of guests they host here. And this is such a beautiful addition to that, very fine tapestry and offering. Yeah. As journalists, we like to drink wine.
I think that applies to all journalists, not just those who write about wine for a living. And I think one of the things that appeals to those of us in the broader media space about wine is that it's not so much about the time on lease and the malolactic fermentation and the 9th filled Romanian oak barrels. It's that wine tells a story, and this is a great example. It tells the story of Erika, it tells the story of Ellerman House. And I think it's something that as media people, we gravitate towards. It's that idea of the story that sits within the wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I just think this is such a beautiful contribution to the story of Ellerman House. I love what they're doing. And of course, it brings the story wider. It takes it to Stellenbosch, to the winelands. It's a beautiful story.
It is indeed, sharing not just the Ellerman story, but of course also Erika Obermeyer. Just as somebody who writes a lot about food, a lot about wine, obviously has a great passion for it. We've spoken a lot over the course of this particular show about where we feel South African food and wine is at. We've had a lot of upbeat response. Jax Lahoud from Wine Magazine was just about cartwheeling in front of the camera. So excited as she at the moment. And Steve Steinfeld wasn't too far off. Are you equally upbeat? Do you feel food and wine wise, we're in a pretty good place at the moment as a country?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm interested in the natural wine movement. I think that's new and fresh, and I see that's picking up in South Africa now. We look at people like Craig Hawkins of Testalonga. I think we're up there with global trends, and we're doing a lot of things our own way. And there's a lot of variety in our offering, and it's exciting.
I love the fact you bring up Craig. I was in Dublin a few weeks ago. In fact, I was in the Republic of Ireland, and in 6 different restaurants across the Republic of Ireland, Craig's wines, the Testalonga range, were on the wine lists in many cases as the only South African wine, and largely because of the natural wine movement. So it's clearly something that's got a big following right around the world, not just with yourself here in South Africa. And that suggests that there's a real interest in South African wine in many different ways. You mentioned you don't just write for Daily Maverick, you obviously do stuff for the BBC, for the Sunday Times, the City Press, and lots of people you engage with, lots of stories you tell. Do you get the sense that there is a real appetite for the South African wine story beyond our borders?
I think, well, I mean, wine is about people. It's about the winemakers. It's about the soil. I think there's a huge appetite for that. There's so much human interest and humanity and people stories behind the wine. I think that's what people gravitate towards. I mean, even Craig Hawkins, he's such an interesting character. I mean, you know, how he bought his farm in the Swartland. There was no electricity. They had it really tough initially. The dog got bitten by a snake and died, and they overcame all that adversity to now have this global Testelonga recognizable range. I think that there are such beautiful stories in wine and South African wine.
Wine in the Swartland. It's basically the country music song of the global wine industry, wine in the Swartland. The results, though, are magnificent. Final word from you. You've already given us some initial thoughts, but is this something you feel you'd set a case aside of and really look forward to enjoying on special occasions?
I think this would be a beautiful wine to keep at hand for lockdown. Next edition. I would find a lot of consolation in this. This is wonderful, and I think it would be a definite hit around the Christmas season, the festive table.
Well, I'm going to pretend that you didn't say lockdown, because that's a word we're all allergic to. But otherwise, the sentiment is entirely identified with, and it's festive or otherwise. It's going to be the cause of much cheer as and when the bottle hits your glass. You have to try some. Bienne, thank you so much for joining us, wrapping up the show in style. We've got some dinner to enjoy very shortly, and we shall do that with some more wine. But for now, thanks so much for joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine.
Brilliant. Thank you.
There we go, and that wraps up what has flown by, a wonderful hour, having a look at more than just a single vintage. It is the story of an exceptionally gifted South African winemaker in Erika Obermeyer, coming together with Ellerman House, an iconic South African property, the one Oprah Winfrey calls her second home. And together they've created a wine that, as you've heard from people who know far more about wine than I do, really does strike a chord in so many different ways. But beyond the wine itself, it also tells a wonderful story and brings together the winemaker and the property through the medium of wine quite delightfully. Also some good news stories about both wine and tourism. So all in all, an upbeat evening, and one that sends me off to dinner here at Ellerman House with a skip in my step. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a very special live broadcast from Ellerman House with a range of terrific guests and some rather nice wine. The brand new 2019 vintage of the Ellerman, produced by Erika Obermeyer. It's a busy week on Dan Really Likes Wine. Tomorrow evening, we're live to California to chat to Zelma Long, Phil Fries, together with Mike Radcliffe out in Stellenbosch, the trio behind Villa Fonte, and their extraordinary success over the last little while. And we'll also be joined by the mad scientist from KWV's The Mentors, Isel van Blag, with a new Malbec that promises to be as seductive and alluring as ever. There's also the launch of Zoo, David Higgs and Gary Kiyaku's brand new spot. And I'll be on social media from that tomorrow evening, including pictures of Steve Steinfeld diving across the bar and behaving as badly as ever. And remember, last night we launched our brand new series, The Red Blazer, with Nicholas Boschendal, Max Mapanyane and myself, our first guest, Catherine Constantinides. Tomorrow, we chat to Jason Goliath. It's a busy week of wine. It's a busy, crazy, manic time of the year. Ease it all with a little bit of wine. And if you're looking for a suggestion, well, the Ellerman isn't too bad. Thanks for joining us. Cheers. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.